Okay, I'd like to introduce today Amy Clarke, who's an artist and founder of Banner Repeater, which is a reading room at the Public Archive of artist publishing and project space, opening up an experimental space for others with a shared focus and a practice on publishing, distribution and dissemination. Her work is concerned with structures of meaning and the semiotics of everyday life, what kind of representation could possibly articulate the complexities and contradictions of life working as an artist today. Recent exhibitions and curation projects include works at Hayward Gallery, Project Space, David Roberts Arts Foundation, Camden Arts Centre, and a solo exhibition in Tokyo, Japan. Richard Cochrane, who's a writer, educator and musician. He's also the founder of the new Maths,
Fine Art Maths Centre.
Fine Art Maths Centre at Central St Martin's, and director of Big Ideas Initiatives. In his previous career, quite a unique biography this, in his previous career he wrote software for derivatives trading floors in the city, most as vice president of Goldman Sachs, but more recently performed at the Museum of London, the Bravo Theatre, and is the author of several books on poetry, computer programming, music and history. So thank you, Amy and Richard.
Hi, thanks very much, Martin. We're going to play this live, and we're connected with an Ethernet cable directly. It's going to be pulling on 994 English language news feeds. So I'm going to start it up and then start my talk. Which means I now can't see. Really cool. Okay.
You want to turn it off?
No, I'm going to use my torch. Technologically enhanced. So this will take a while to ruminate and start up. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work, Low Animal Spirits, which is what we're going to be watching, the ideas behind the work and the ideas that were spun forth from making the work. The origins of today's futuristic computer-driven market trace back to a single day of disaster, Black Monday, on October 19, 1987. The Dow Jones Industrial Average cratered by 23%, its biggest one-day decline ever. Stocks were plunging so quickly that NASDAQ market makers, the middlemen who greased the market's wheels, stopped picking up the phone, and retail investors who wanted to salvage their portfolios were left out in the cold. In response, NASDAQ tweaked an existing system that would automatically give retail investors preference in the trading queue. It made it mandatory for market makers to instantly execute trades of 1,000 shares or less by retail investors in its small order execution system. Market makers and institutional investors, who usually traded in much bigger chunks of stock, had to wait in line behind the SOES traders. Since these trades were automated, meaning they received almost instant execution and were given priority ahead of the rest of the market, a fast-moving trader could move in and out of stocks using SOES at a far more rapid pace than large investors, generating big profits. Accelerating the growth of the ECNs were new regulations instituted in the aftermath of a scandal that showed that NASDAQ market makers had been manipulating trades. In 1997, the NASDAQ implemented the order handling rules passed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. These rules mandated that bids and offers for stocks on ECNs would be displayed on terminals right beside those of the NASDAQ market makers. Traders using Archipelago or the island could have their orders treated just the same as the NASDAQ big shots, who largely controlled trading until then. Another spur to electronic trading came in 2000 with decimalisation, the trading of stocks in penny-wide increments rather than fractions of a dollar, which meant that stocks could trade at many more points than ever before. And with a level of complexity easier handled by computers than the human brain. An abrupt transition to a new all-machine phase characterised by large numbers of sub-second, ultra-fast extreme events, accelerating ever faster versions of existing behaviours as new regimes emerge. Only a fly, its faster metabolic rate and critical flicker fusion frequency has enough time to escape an ecology of competitive machines featuring crowds of predatory algorithms. Casino capitalism, born with ever-expanding complexity. Decimalisation also cut down on the profitability of making markets. since the bid-ask spread narrowed dramatically, causing many established market makers to close shop, opening up the field for the super-efficient high-speed firms. In 2013, Getco, one of the largest high-frequency firms, became a designated market maker on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, a role formerly held by specialists. In the summer of 2013, the New York Exchange opened up a massive computer data centre in Mahwah, New Jersey, to cater to high-speed trading firms. Donald Mackenzie, writing recently, notes that now that computers, not humans, are doing the trading, geography comes to matter exquisitely. The exchanges were looking for cheap real estate out in New Jersey, which soon became saturated in terms of who could plant yet another new microwave dish, as they tended to interfere with one another's reception. Originally, the data needed for high-frequency trading travelled almost exclusively via fibre optic cables, in which signals move at about 2/3 of the speed that light travels in a vacuum, and has the bandwidth to transmit the huge volumes of data necessary for today's financial markets. But 125,000 miles per second isn't fast enough if other market participants are faster. The theory of relativity tells us that nothing can travel faster than light in a vacuum. Air, unlike glass fibre, slows light down almost imperceptibly. Sending light or radio signals through the atmosphere is less than 1/10 of 1% slower than the speed of light in a vacuum. With any of these technologies, fibre optic cable, microwave, millimetre wave, laser transmission through the atmosphere, the exact route taken is crucial. Which brings us to a peculiar materiality at the data exchange that the IT departments of every hedge fund firm are constantly trying to improve upon in a technological Star Wars for speed. And there's even talk of using neutrinos and hitching a lift off a particle accelerator, which I just love the sound of. But let us return to the work. Low animal spirits is a high-frequency trading algorithm written by Richard Cochrane, an ex-vice president of Goldman Sachs, that is driven by real-time data and scripted as a live on-screen score and audio work with automated readers. You'll get the benefit of no automated readers today because you won't be able to hear me above the din. The work takes its cue from the oft-mentioned loss of the referent in both language and the economy that I kept hearing being speculated about after the economic collapse of 2008 and 2009 from people like Viva Baradi and others. In short, it is a live model of high-frequency trading dealing in words sourced from global news feeds for virtual profit while speculating on their usage. The analysis produces new phenomena in the form of headlines generated with the help of natural language processing algorithms tweeted at their animal spirit. And it's actually tweeting not from this one, but from the programme that's running at the Hayward Gallery at the moment in a group show with End User. And the headlines that I've posted up on the wall there are just headline prints of some of the speculative headlines that it's tweeted. Visualisation you see projected is a glimpse into the HFT algorithm's buying and selling activity, with volatility at the centre of these concerns. It accesses 994 English language global news feeds live and acts upon the data as if it were trading in the global marketplace, analysing words in terms of the potential for a virtual profit to be made. You are watching what is about to trend, and likewise, the speculative headline generator is trying very hard to anticipate the next headline, based on recent history and incoming headlines, with the help of a natural language processing algorithm. The project really began when Richard Slip used to work as Vice President of Goldman Sachs, writing high-frequency trading algorithms on the trading floor, and shortly after that I asked him if he'd be interested in working with me on a project I've been thinking of by applying an HFT algorithm to global news production. I was intrigued by the effects of new aggregate modes of production, as well as distribution and reception of news, and wondered in what way were these aggregate forms affecting news, the type of news we received, and equally, in that feedback loop, the type of news that was being produced. Traditional ways of doing journalism had taken a hit from what could loosely be termed citizen journalism, but also, in order to survive, many news producers had drifted online. Thinking back on how new technologies of the time, such as the printing press, had, to a certain extent, determined a particular kind of news produced, and in the wake of their distribution had formulated what was reading public, I was intrigued as to what effects these new methods were having. We're trying to include as many English language news platforms as we could in the 994 RSS news feeds, so that there's pretty much representation of all the countries in the world. There's a few that we chose not to give them the information that they needed, such as North Korea, for wanting us to join their news site. Pretty much, it's quite good coverage, really. But there's, of course, aggregate platforms that deal with English language news production in places where English language isn't the native language. And also we included things, a certain amount of Yahoo sites as well, because of how we actually come to news is not necessarily through these platforms. The algorithms that facilitate the production, distribution and reception of online news are responsible for making visible certain items over others, responding to a ranking system that we all contribute to through accessing online media, and clearly not all items that we click on are newsworthy. And if we want our news to relate to something closer to the truth, these new aggregate forms also bring about a constantly updated version of the truth, one that shifts according to new information, not static or absolute by any means. Mercedes Buns, who is both a journalist and a theorist of technology and writer of The Silent Revolution, How Digitalisation Transforms Knowledge, Work, Journalism and Politics Without Making Too Much Noise, notes the condition of the digital fact is different, and this difference can be described as follows. The fact of our industrial past claims truthfulness by being durable. This durability is incompatible with the constantly changing knowledge landscape of digitisation. Algorithms are frequently updating the fact, with the outcome that it is being altered endlessly. While the digital fact has never been more accurate, it has also never been less durable. It becomes obvious that the digital fact is relating to truth in a new and different way than the fact of the industrial age. For truth and facts aren't the same, but share a rather complex relationship, newly adjusted by technology. Instead of appreciating the fact's new accuracy, we have the impression that the ever-changing digital fact can't be true. Truths don't alter, as Hannah Arendt correctly pointed out. Obviously, we still judge the world according to the rules of an older discourse, the rules of the printing press that served us very well for so long, a printing press that wasn't demanding a fact to be updated as soon as possible in order to be more accurate. And Mercedes is really interesting in that she sort of realises the shape of truth seems to be related to the technical means we use for approaching it. And there's another question that comes about what happens to the collective memory of the people stored happily until now in microfiche scans of the newspaper. So two different operations change news production today. The algorithms that sift and determine what is made visible, and a change in production related to the shift from an older traditional journalistic model of one to many, where a reputation for accuracy has been hard won over time, to that of productions that come with what Buns calls a chorus of voices of plurality, and a shift to a model of the many to the many. When we consider the pragmatic uses of a platform such as Ushahidi Web, that relies on many uploaded accounts, Ushahidi is Swahili for witness, to verify stories in areas of conflict, we can see how this might be of use. But what happens when the ranking system becomes a popularity contest, or structurally cannot support within its operation the reporting of alternative stories? Nicholas Luhmann, in his work on systems theory, suggests that these autopoietic approaches in how news media systems work show how the necessity of creating information in a media ecology of competing 24-hour networks leads to certain structures of typification, completely unrelated to propaganda or manipulation. 100 years ago, the Russian mathematician A.A. Markov founded a new branch of probability theory by applying mathematics to poetry, by analysing the text of Alexander Pushkin's novel Eugene Onegin. I don't think I pronounced that correctly, but his analysis didn't alter the understanding or appreciation of Pushkin's poem, but the technique he developed, now known as the Markov chain, extended the theory of probability in a new direction. Markov's methodology went beyond coin flipping and dice rolling situations, where each event is independent of all others, to chains of linked events, where what happens next depends on the current state of the system. Recent years have seen the construction of enormous Markov chains, such as the PageRank algorithm devised by Larry Page and Sergey Brin, founders of Google. This Markov chain states are the pages of the World Wide Web, perhaps 40 billion of them. The transitions are links between pages. The aim of the algorithm is to calculate for each web page the probability that a reader following links at random will arrive at that page. And we can see with the inevitability of what to expect in our email account's advertising box that increasingly through the application of big data, both marketing drives and surveillance thrive, while structural feedback loops typically reify and reinforce certain cultural, racial, gendered assumptions and misconceptions, limiting users to a particular stream and loss perspective. And this problem really intrigues me greatly because we can clearly see that not only the cybernetic structure of autopoiesis forecloses any real creativity or possible execution outside of its very narrow concerns when it's defined in this way, but also there's a sort of boring repetition which is extremely easy to ignore from the advertisers. So surely this is not actually being too successful a strategy. Which brings me to ideas that smack of a certain performativity, a somewhat abstract notion that blurs the lines between language and what we might regard as code, where saying coincides with doing. And this was touched upon in a graphic structure, metal sculpture, breaking news flash crash that we showed alongside Animal Spirits when we was at Banner Peter. In 2013, the Associated Press Twitter account was hacked and tweeted, breaking, 2 explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured. The Washington Post, New York Magazine and Andrew Yoskovich in Art to Dawn News reported that hackers caused a mini stock market flash crash this afternoon after sending a bogus tweet from a hacked Associated Press Twitter account. The tweet read that there were explosions at the White House and President Barack Obama had been injured. The account was quickly shut down, but the damage had been done. US markets, including the Dow Jones and S&P 500, fell 1% in 1 minute before rebounding. White House spokesperson Jay Carney quickly dismissed the story by saying the president was doing just fine. And the Associated Press quickly suspended all of its Twitter accounts. Equally, I was fascinated by the flock of Twitter bots that we have following their animal spirit, retweeting its output for all sorts of reasons. From Ukraine Reddit retweeting Ukraine news, and Ebola News Now, which alarmingly retweets every tweet that mentions Ebola. An early review in Artslot that we had of the work at Banner Peter ran with this idea and claimed there was an art project at East London train station, tweets speculative headlines to affect stock market algorithms. No, really. It's difficult to see how we might get out of this period of low animal spirits, a phrase coined by the economist Keynes when the Great Depression hit, unsettling of his investments, theoretical and otherwise, in ideas of a self-regulating and sustainable market, and recently revoiced by the previous governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, after the last crash. In 2009, the economists Akerlof and Schiller advised that the proper role of the government, like the proper role of the advice for a parent, is to set the stage. The stage should give full rein to the creativity of capitalism, but it should also countervail the excesses that occur because of our animal spirits. Through the lens of high-frequency trading, an extreme version of algorithmic operations can be seen to reach ever-increasing speeds, coupled with an increasing use of probability theory, via the structural frameworks in which they operate, which draws attention perhaps to a new paradigm, whereby a differential economy through operation can be seen to become increasingly the norm. The media theorists Joseph Bogle and Philip Urquhart, discussing speculation recently in 2014, note 2 important new factors. First, an acceleration of operations all the way to high-frequency trading, and second, the implementation of algorithms designed to make uncertain futures or market trends expectable or probable. And they note a similarity in high-frequency trading operational structures to that of fashion trade, saying, so there's no complete presence of fashion, it's always already woven into a differential economy of time, in which it is coming, it's fading, it's plunging into the future and consuming itself in this plunge. High-frequency trading remains peculiarly invisible in its operation of speculative finance. And with this, fundamental problems are introduced with regards to the mediatisation and even representability of speculation. As a consequence of these considerations, Bogle is pragmatic in his approach for introducing the complexity of speculation as a particular form of contract, and one that, as he suggests, refers to uncertain futures. Bogle goes on to make an overtly ethical judgment and proposes that with this, our social contracts have been tacitly rewritten, saying a social contract based on reciprocity, however fictional it may be, can still be the founding document of a republican society. That's the legacy of political theory since the 18th century. Now there's suddenly a social contract in its stead that's defined by an economy of credit and finance in which the structural insolvency of the system is perpetually compensated for by an ongoing futurisation of debt. Societies are held together by debts that no one can pay, by credits that can't be redeemed. All that necessitates is systematic and future-fixated, incessant operation of the whole economy. He considers the effects of these mechanisms. What I'm really interested in are the sort of mechanisms themselves, the algorithms and structures haunting the background of these operations and their representations in a period of high algorithmic spirits. I'm going to be continuing this research in the near future, and there is a number of intriguing possibilities that I came up against, perhaps. I was reading these questions as maybe a place to all get us thinking. How do signs function in the economy as semiotic operators beyond the dualism of signify and signified? How do algorithms operate if they're not simply instructions to be performed but have become performing entities, actualities that select, evaluate, transform and produce data? And this was really interesting when he was talking earlier. And also asking what might be meant by Luciano Parisi's recent claim, whose recent book, Contagious Architecture, is brilliant, incidentally. Instead of granting the infallible execution of automated order and control, the entropic tendency of data to increase in size and thus to become random drives infinite amounts of information to interfere with and to reprogram algorithmic procedures. And although her research relates to computational design and architecture, she claims that this is the computational aesthetics that governs digital culture today, including the relational architecture of databases, the cultural, political and economic statements of search culture, the connectedness of social media and the immediacy of data communication. Asking ultimately where our co-evolution with technology will take us next, in the face of such high algorithmic spirits, where we might inhabit the zones between biopower and semi-capital as sites where body and embodiment and inscription and incorporation, as Catherine Hales posits it, are in constant and dynamic interplay with one another, where these polarities are not static concepts, but mutating surfaces that transform into one another. I'll hand you over to Rich.
So I'm really just going to say a few historical things which kind of came out of my engagement with this and how I understand it. Hopefully sit in the background of what Amy's been saying. As we've heard, John Maynard Keynes wrote the General Theory of Employment during the Great Depression. And at one point he asks, what would induce a speculator to invest at a time like this? After all, asset prices are falling, so your return on any investment looks as if it's going to be negative. So the rational thing to do is stay out of the market. But if everyone does that, then the recession will never end. Here's the quote. Thus, if the animal spirits are dimmed and the spontaneous optimism falters, leaving us to depend on nothing but a mathematical expectation, enterprise will fade and die. Individual initiative will only be adequate when reasonable calculation is supplemented and supported by animal spirits, so that the thought of ultimate loss is put aside as the healthy man puts aside the expectation of death. Now for Keynes, then, capital circulates according to a double law. On the one hand, the maximisation of expected utility, quantity that may be easily calculated from available data. And on the other, this is a quote, an innate urge to activity that causes us to prefer to take a risk rather than pass it by. One leads to mechanistic determinism. The other perturbs the system with an almost magical external intervention. Within this short passage, Keynes, probably without really meaning to, opens up a series of oppositions that, like a ladder, lead deep into the well of modernity. The fixed past against the open future, the dead against the living, providence and speculation, object and agent, utility and genius, logic and imagination, the medieval and the modern, probability and certainty, body and medicine, animality and reason. In the Christian tradition, the phenomenon of uncertainty was underwritten by providence, the inscrutable divine plan. For Machiavelli and his contemporaries, Fortuna was personified as a cold and distant goddess, turning her wheel that brings low the mighty and raises up the meek. Although one could court her, in the end her favours, like those of the Petrarchan beloved, were bestowed only capriciously and with no regard for human suffering. Hence, all those methods of divination based largely on randomness, including cartomancy. Playing cards and dice became an obsession among the European aristocracy, who won and lost fortunes at the gaming tables. It has been said that the 17th century aristocrats gambled to demonstrate their wealth and how little they cared about losing it. But while it's true that spectacular losses, like spectacular drunkenness, could seem heroic, probability theory would never have developed were it not for wealthy gamblers trying to find an edge. The great probabilists of the previous century, I'm talking about the 17th century, sorry, the great probabilists of the 17th century, beginning with the correspondence of Fermat and Pascal, had begun to bind what was once called luck or fortune in the apparently iron laws of expected value, a process developed and formalised by de Moivre in his 1718 Doctrine of Chances, which gave birth to a popular literature conveying the new science of probability. It now seemed like every player in every game would soon have the same information and thus act the same way, incapacitating the very engine that drives such games along. In the game of finance, expected values will be in gradual but terminal decline, and risks will become ever less worth taking. The only economic activity becomes the exploitation of the irrationalities of others, ignorance, foolishness, and vice. Trade degenerates to the level of three-card Monte. Keynes optimistically posits another irrationality opposed to this one, positively valued and irrepressible. And it is this that he names animal spirits. It's this that separates the human agent from the calculating machines that Leibniz was building in de Moivre's time, or Alan Turing in Keynes's. It culminates in the heroic investor, whose portrait Keynes paints in those few words, the boisterous, swashbuckling capitalist, hungry for risk as an affirmation of life itself, the je ne sais quoi that separates the human trader from the computer algorithm that threatens to replace her. Martin, am I right for time?
Yeah.
Cool. Descartes' account of the animal soul as principle of self-movement draws its details and its originality from the imagining of a hydraulic system through which the volatile animal spirit travels, whose conduits are the nerves. The word spirit is an alchemical survival. For Descartes is writing in the dog days of that tradition, which will limp on for another half century or so. Alchemists, like modern chemists, distilled a relatively pure alcohol from available mixtures such as wine. Released from heavier bodies, this almost immaterial substance vanishes rapidly if spilled or poured on the skin, leaving a cold sensation as if it's drawn a little of the very life from the body. Hence it came to be known as aqua vitae and thought of as at least analogous to the spirit that is freed from the body at the moment of death. Hence, animal spirits were held, like other spirits, to be physical things, but also carried, as it were in their genealogy, this association with the soul. The Cartesian model was taken up by Newton in his infamous writings on alchemy. There he wrote that nature is a perpetual circulatory worker, with the earth like a great heart, pumping ether from its centre up into the atmosphere and from there out into the cosmos. It is as if ether is the principle of change and dynamism in the universe, a sort of life force. Animal life, meanwhile, is bodily, And animal locomotion takes place by means of the heavy muscular juices. The animal spirits mediate between these normally inert liquids and the ether, allowing meat to become self-moving. For Newton, the animal spirits represent a spark of divinity in the body, just as the ether gives divine life to the physical universe. Animal spirits were still part of the standard account of physiology among the generation after Newton, despite the general rejection of the language of alchemy. Bishop Berkeley, for example, speculates that many then unexplained phenomena of change might find their cause in an overarching principle of vitality or dynamism. Quote, "The phenomena of light, animal spirit, muscular motion, fermentation, vegetation, and other natural operations seem to require nothing more than the intellectual and artificial fire of Heraclitus, Hippocrates, the Stoics, and other ancients." Berkeley's invocation of the Heraclitean fire indicates that he is thinking in a precisely analogous way to Newton, despite the falling away of the alchemical correspondences. This mysterious fire that heats things up and gets them moving remained the mysterious engine at the heart of all natural processes. The nervous system had been well known since the ancient Greeks, but its function had never quite been established. The animal spirits theory was superseded only when a more careful understanding of electricity was achieved, thanks to Volta, who experimented on live frogs, and Galvani, who used dead ones. That's how to remember the difference. Today, the mediator between the executive function and the muscle tissues is understood to be electrical in nature. Yet despite its bureaucratic, secularized terminology, the executive function remains almost as mysterious to us as it was to Newton. Electricity remained a powerful symbol of the mysteries of life and nature well into the 20th century. Although it underwent many transformations, the essential idea continued through the organicist theories of the iatromechanists of the 18th century and the phrenologists of the 19th, issuing in more modern neuroscience, and the Freudian model of the psyche as a system of flows and blockages of libido. By coincidence, Newton's interest in alchemy was rediscovered by Keynes, who had bought a trunk of the physicist's notes sight unseen at an auction in 1936. Keynes was disappointed to discover them half full of mystical and theological speculations. And he expressed this disappointment by appeal to a typically liberal progressive model of history. He came to see Newton as the last of the magicians in the final drowsy summer of the childhood of the West. Animal spirits are the prerequisite for speculation. That is, investment that claims in some sense to see what cannot ordinarily be seen. Investors and traders are highly valued for their instincts, their feeling for the markets in which they operate, that seem to afford them a certain special insight into how things will turn out. Speculation is a way of seeing that is in some sense specialised, not available to all. This way of thinking is what Kant's first critique primarily aims to demolish. Thought that claims to reach beyond what can be rationally known to a deeper, higher, profounder mystery. Such was the era of the Hermetic philosophers in the 16th century, with their Neoplatonic essences and emanations and their astrological and numerological correspondences, and above all, their occult knowledge that could be discerned only by those initiates who had learned to see aright. Yet such speculation was not killed off. The Romantic view was that knowledge comes in a flash as a gestalt, a moment of totality, transports us directly from ignorance to complete knowledge. We see everything as it is, all at once. The ability to speculate in this way depends on experience, and perhaps a certain kind of attitude or a set of personal traits that confer enhanced insight. It may also recall our contemporary culture's love affair with the police procedural. in which the managerial administration of crime detection methods is traduced at critical moments by the flash of genius, the gut reaction, the application of force of character, the analogy with past experiences, in short, by speculation rather than instrumental rationality. Our archetypal image of the journalist is of the same mould. The claim, implicit or not, to know what cannot be known cuts deeply against the Christian moral tradition. It has the savour of pride about it, a quality played up by popular cultural depictions of bankers and other participants in financial speculation. To know the unknowable is to know what only God can know, to proclaim oneself equal to God, and hence, in a sense, beyond the reach of his moral order. And indeed, tales of the debauchery of the masters of the universe, vast banquets, drug and alcohol binges, sexual exploitation are easy to come by. In the late 1980s, traders who had once been functionaries rose to occupy the place of primary importance in Western financial institutions. And those who were successful made more money more quickly than anyone outside the top echelons of show business or organised crime. Star fund managers exuded a kind of genius and were given a very long leash by their organisations, which often knew that they were gambling wildly, but had internalised the credo of the city: no risk, no return. In the 18th century, gambling had been widely deplored as bondage of the will, and yet it continued to be articulated largely in the language of sin rather than that of addiction until well into the 20th century. Sin had always carried with it an air of salacious danger. But in the hands of some proto-romantics and romantics, it became an expression of the genius of the individual who, in defying God, laid claim to a divinity of its own. To the Byronic hero, sexual transgression, drugs, alcohol, blasphemy and gambling were all tools for rebelling in the model of Milton's Satan against the prudish God of the bourgeoisie. In the case of gaming, choosing chance over providence was surely a gesture of this kind, turning away from meek acceptance of a predefined order in favour of creative chaos. Pascal's wager causes us to choose the safer route. One could hardly make the other, more hazardous choice unless engorged by animal spirits. Why is the gesture heroic rather than absurd? Because it lays claim to the great virtue of the age, autonomy. The red-blooded appetite driving the macho trader to win at high stakes perhaps forms part of Keynes's animal spirits. Similar properties surely belong to the heroic scientist, the public dissector or vivisector, the virtuoso musician or artist, all of whom employ and demonstrate their unique ability to speculate on the law governing an observation, the precise movement of scalpel on flesh or horsehair bow on catgut, and get it right. At least, such is the promise of the great speculator.
Amy and Richard. Just going to take only one question at a time. Anybody has one? Someone might be one. Can I take any questions?
Come on. Honestly.
It's just a lot.
There's only one, it's first hand up.
That was a great piece. So animal spirit basically is the trader in my sense, right? So,
That's my understanding, yes. It would be interesting to talk more with you about that actually. But yes, I feel like what you described as kind of re-injecting this
so speculation outside of numbers and programs and
yes.
computer speculation to the matter itself, which is the material or
The relation with material is interesting. I don't know whether, do you want to speak to that at all?
I don't know what the question was, sorry.
So I mean, my question is, then are you for or against algorithmic trading?
I don't think you can look for or against, can you? Well,
you acknowledge that there is something outside, right? So the speculation to you is, that's my question, is it something that could be taken care of by the algorithm, or is it something that, given the algorithm, it's up to the animal who lives in that habitat, which is the trader in my situation, up to him only to capture and therefore trade outside the box?
I think one thing that's worth saying to that is that the fear is that the algorithmic approach, the mathematical approach, kind of bottoms out at some point. There's a point at which you hit the speed of light, or you hit, you hit these kind of hard limitations where everybody has the same information, everybody's using the same mathematics. There's physical limitations to what can be done, and so essentially the action of the market, if it's purely algorithmic, purely kind of deterministic, is probably going to descend into a sort of randomness. You know, whether if you and I both have kind of 9/10 of the speed of light connections to the exchange, which of us gets filled on our order? You know, we're getting down to kind of
But that's where we're at now, though.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I was saying that was actually where we're at now, and there is a sort of it's different because I thought your talk was intriguing.
Yeah, because that's where we're at now, trading only the basic stuff, which are the underlying. But no algorithmic trading can trade derivatives. That's my point.
But I think
to me, the richness of the market lies in the derivative structures, not in trading something statistically.
That's an interesting aesthetic approach. Isn't it? I mean, am I mischaracterising you there? Yeah, it seems like what you're saying is that we should have interesting markets rather than something else. I mean, I don't have a.
Yeah, we're bound to have interesting markets because the market is quantitative history. History is interesting because history happens every day and is unpredictable every day, and the market is just the quantitative reflection of that. So of course we'll have a market anywhere, and it will always be interesting because events will always unfold in a completely non-algorithmic or predictable way.
Because I know you're going to have an opportunity to talk later quite easily. I have to move it on because it's just an unfortunate thing. You can talk all now. I'm having to get rid of
stop now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.